All right. Good afternoon. Apologies for the delay, but there was all sorts of breaking things going on. And will start off with a statement on the situation in the Central African Republic. The Secretary General strongly condemns today's attacks near Bangui by unidentified armed combatants on Central African national and security forces, as well as UN peacekeepers. A UN peacekeeper from Rwanda was killed and another injured in today's attack. The Secretary General expresses his deepest condolences to the families of the deceased peacekeeper, as well as to the people and government of Rwanda. He wishes a speedy recovery to those injured. The Secretary General recalls that attacks against UN peacekeepers may constitute a war crime. He calls on the Central African authorities to take all necessary measures to ensure accountability for these heinous attacks. The Secretary General remains very concerned over continued destabilization efforts by armed groups in the Central African Republic and calls on all parties to stop violence and engage in meaningful dialogue. He commends the continued engagement of the UN peacekeepers and their efforts to protect civilians and preserve national stability. The Secretary General reiterates the commitment of the UN working closely with national, regional, and international partners to support the cause of peace in the Central African Republic. And just a more operational update following the morning's attack, the UN mission tells us that the overall situation remains under control, although tensions are continuing. UN peacekeepers have reinforced their posture in Bangui and in areas surrounding the capital in coordination with Central African defense and security forces, as well as other security partners. And this is to prevent further infiltration towards the capital of armed groups aiming to destabilize national institutions. The security of UN personnel and premises have also been reinforced. And another sad and tragic note from our peacekeeping colleagues. Following an attack today against a UN convoy in Timbuktu in Mali, the peacekeeping mission reports that one peacekeeper has died and 7 others were injured. The UN mission has secured the area, provided casualty evacuation, and launched an investigation into the incident. And as soon as we get more details on that incident in Mali, we will share that with you. And as you know, Mali was the subject at hand in the Security Council this morning, and they heard from Mahatma Salif Anadif, the head of the UN peacekeeping mission in the country, who reiterated that the transition period represents a real opportunity for the country to break out of the vicious circle of political crises followed by coups d'etats. He noted that despite the lack of consensus throughout the process has led to the designation of members of the government and National Transitional Council, and we should welcome the fact that all transitional bodies are operational today. And Mr. Anadif also told council members that the success of the transition depends on the successful completion of reforms leading to inclusive and credible elections. He warned that this process will only be viable if the product of the will of the Malian, if the product is of, let's try this again. He warned that the process will only be viable if it is the product of the will of the Malian political actors. As a special representative for Mali for nearly 5 years, he concluded that with his hope that this window of opportunity will not be a missed opportunity. I also have a statement on the situation in Uganda. As Ugandans prepare to take part in the presidential and parliamentary elections scheduled to take place on January 14th, the Secretary General calls on all national stakeholders to ensure that the polls are conducted in an all-inclusive, transparent, and peaceful manner. He is concerned about the reports of violence and tensions in part of Uganda ahead of these polls and calls on all political actors and their supporters to refrain from the use of hate speech, intimidation, and violence. Any electoral disputes should be resolved through legal and peaceful means. The Secretary General further calls on the Ugandan authorities, particularly the security forces, to show restraint during this period and to act according to established human rights principles. The Secretary General reiterates the commitment of the United Nations to support the country's effort to promote sustainable development and build a prosperous future. That statement will be shared with you. Turning to Ethiopia, where our humanitarian colleagues are telling us today that they are deeply concerned about the plight of hundreds of thousands of people who have still not received assistance in Tigray more than 2.5 months since the conflict began in that region. We continue to receive alarming reports of civilians being injured and killed in rural areas of Tigray, as well as violations against civilians, including gender-based violence. It remains challenging to verify these reports. As we told you last week, aid workers have been able to deliver assistance in some areas, mainly in cities, where access has been granted by the authorities. However, the number of people reached is extremely low compared to the 2.3 million people we estimate are in need of life-saving assistance. Our humanitarian colleagues stress that the situation is particularly critical for newly displaced people and refugees, especially those who are living in the Hitstats and Shimbeleba camps, which remain inaccessible. Our colleagues also warn that the closure of banks in most parts of rural Tigray before the fighting started have left most of the 270,000 direct beneficiaries of the government's safety net program without assistance. These are extremely vulnerable people who rely on monthly cash transfers to meet their basic needs. And humanitarian assistance continues to be constrained by the lack of full and safe, unhindered access to Tigray, caused by both insecurity and bureaucratic delays. We and our humanitarian partners in Ethiopia urgently call on all parties to allow for the immediate safe passage of humanitarian personnel and their supplies to the Tigray region to make sure we're able to reach all people who desperately need assistance. Turning to Malawi, just wanted to say that the Secretary General has learned with great sadness of the untimely passing of the Minister of Transport and Public Works, Sidik Mia, as well as the Minister of Local Governments and Rural Development, Livingston Belekianyama. The Secretary General expresses his condolences to the families of the ministers, all Malians who have died due to complications, all Malawians who have died due to complications related to COVID-19, President Louis Chakwera, the government, and the people of Malawi. And just to tell you what we are doing on the ground in Malawi relations to the pandemic, the UN team, which is led by the resident coordinator, Maria Jose Torres Macho, continues helping with national and local efforts to tackle the pandemic. WHO, UNICEF, and other partners have installed an oxygen plant to generate more than 1 million liters of oxygen per day to support COVID-19 case management in one of the country's main hospitals. The UN team is also working to improve access to clean water and sanitation, as well as working to save lives and livelihoods, reaching 1.7 million people through cash transfers. The UN continues to help with communications campaigns to prevent the spread of the virus through door-to-door efforts, mobile vans, community drama sessions, and social media efforts. Through the Spotlight Initiative, we are also tackling gender violence, and we're concerned with an increase in girl pregnancies and child marriages. And I have been asked about reports of the execution by lethal injection in the United States of Lisa Montgomery. As we have said many times, the Secretary General stands categorically against the imposition of the death penalty. He urges all member states that have not yet done so to embark on a moratorium on capital punishment and the progressive abolition of the death penalty. And in a new report that I think concerns all of us, the International Labor Organization says that those working from home need better protection. In low and middle income countries, for instance, ILO says that almost all home-based workers, that's 90% of them, work informally. They are usually worse off than those who work outside the home, even in higher skilled professions. Home workers earn an average of 13% less in the UK, 22% less in the US, 25% less in South Africa, and about 50% less in Argentina, India, and Mexico. Home workers also face greater safety and health risks and have less access to training than non-home-based workers. This can affect their career prospects. As working from home is likely to take on greater importance in the years to come, ILO calls on governments to work in cooperation with workers and employers' organizations to ensure home workers move from invisibility to decent work. And a quick update from our friends at FAO in Rome, who are telling us that the number of outbreaks of the peste des petits ruminants, which is known as English as sheep and goat plague, fell by 2/3 in recent years. This, they say, shows commitment of the international community to combat the highly contagious animal disease and raises hopes of meeting the goal of global eradication by 2030. The decrease in outbreaks of the disease is attributed to the impact of vaccination campaigns in more than 50 countries. In just 12 of these countries, over 300 million goats and sheep were vaccinated between 2015 and 2018. Shortage of vaccines, livestock, movement, and mostly logistical challenges in carrying out vaccinations continue to remain the main obstacle to eradication. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for, at least we have on this side of the podium. Ukraine has officially become the first member state to pay its dues in full for 2021, and making it on the honor roll. And we say a big thank you to our friends in Kiev for this full payment. I need to earn that pay now. Yes, Edie.
Thank you very much, Steph. A few follow-ups on the attack in near Bangui. Were there any other deaths or just this Rwandan peacekeeper? And does the UN believe that this is election related? And then I have another question.
I can't speak to casualties from groups outside of the UN. I will ask, but that's the information that I have, which is one peacekeeper killed and another one wounded. I think it clearly comes within the context of the elections, and I think it bears reiterating the urgent need for all political leaders in the Central African Republic to ensure that everyone follows the constitutional process.
Okay, my second question is that the head of Human Rights Watch, Ken Roth, did a virtual press conference with the Geneva Press Corps, and he said during that press conference that the Secretary General's term, quote, hasn't been great, close quote, when it comes to human rights. He faulted him for not naming perpetrators and speaking more often to condemn rights abusers more broadly. Quote, the real test of the Secretary General's effectiveness is, does somebody feel the heat from his commentary on human rights? And the answer generally is no, because he doesn't name anybody. Well, can you respond?
We always appreciate Mr. Roth's frank and open dialogue that he has with us. First of all, on the selection process, that'll be up to the member states to decide on the candidacy of Antonio Guterres. I think the Secretary General's record on human rights is a strong one, in which we differ obviously from Mr. Roth. I think he has been very direct, and he's been very outspoken. And I also think it's important to step back and look at all of the we all have a different role to play. The Secretary General, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, NGOs such as Human Rights Watch, and I think we're all working towards the same goal. We have different tools to get to that goal. Yes, Madame Salome.
Thanks, Steph. Follow up on Uganda elections as well. Some human rights groups are concerned about the crackdown on social media there. What's the Secretary General's position on that ahead of an election? Obviously, it's an issue in other countries as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that our own Human Rights Office has expressed concern about. Our folks on the ground, it's important that there is ability for people to communicate and express themselves freely. Okay, Mr. Reinl.
Hi, Stéphane. It segues neatly because it's another question on the elections in Uganda. You've given us a lot of information already, but one of the issues that seems to be emerging over there and concerns is that there aren't going to be any monitors international monitors. The Americans can't get in, the European Union can't get in. You said you're concerned about what's happening there already. Are you concerned about that in particular? And also, does the UN have any monitors on the ground in Uganda?
No, the UN does not, I mean, unless we have a direct mandate to do so, but we haven't been doing it in quite some time. We don't monitor elections. We often, if we're asked, do a coordination of the different monitoring groups. My understanding, at least from media reports that I've seen, is that the East African community has monitors, so there is some international monitoring, but obviously we will be, I would say, monitoring with a small m, looking at and keeping a close eye on the elections, and we'll have more to say afterwards. But I think our concerns have been raised both locally, they've been raised from here. The UN Human Rights Office in Geneva has also raised concern, notably around the deteriorating human rights situation in Uganda in the run-up to the elections.
Great, thanks, Steph.
Okay, let me go to. No, I don't. Any other, Wave, if you have another question on screen. Stefano, and then I'll go to you, Edie.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have two questions. One is about freedom of expression. Lately, because Trump has been forbidden, been kicked out practically from social medias, there's been some concern around the world in some government, even European government, that this was not something appropriate. What the Secretary General thinks about that, also because at least myself, I always thought that freedom of expression is the citizen be free to express toward the government, not really vice versa. It's not really to protect the government because the government has other way. And then my last question is about today. He's a 6 month. Sorry, I think there is a problem with volume, but it was 6 months from, maybe like this better, 6 months from Mario Pachola found dead in Colombia. I know that there was a land investigation by the United Nations. Can you share with us what the United Nations came up with about the death of Mario Pachola? Thank you.
No, I don't have any update on that tragic incident. I will try to get one to you. On social media, this is a debate going on the world over, and one that we have been talking about, that different parts of the UN have been talking about. The issue of social media as being a tool for spreading disinformation, spreading hate speech, has been the focus of the work of different parts of the UN, from UN Women to UN ODC to the Verify campaign that our colleagues in the Department of Global Communications are running. I mean, there is a basic principle, as you said, that all measures to contain harmful, hateful speech should be strictly compliant with international human rights norms. Now, obviously, governments have responsibilities under treaties they have signed to, charters they've signed to, including the UN Charter regarding international human rights. Private corporations are a different thing. There is a UN guiding principles on business and human rights that says that companies have a responsibility to prevent, mitigate, and remedy human rights violations where they occur. There is a need, and there has been a dialogue within the UN system to bring different key stakeholders together to discuss those issues. Okay, Edie?
Thank you, Steph. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission today said it had received information that over 80 civilians were killed early Tuesday in western Benishangul Gumuz, that region, not in Tigray. This is outside Tigray. Does the UN have any comment?
It's the first I've heard of it, so I will look into it.
Thank you.
Okay. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. I want to ask about the Libyan Consultative Committee meeting in Geneva. I'm sorry if you mentioned something before I joined the press conference, but if you have any update, and what is the mandate of this consultative committee?
Yesterday, it's starting off. I think it started off today in Geneva, if I remember what I said yesterday, and we'll send you the details. It's part of this ongoing political process, which our mission has been working very hard with the various Libyan actors. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Hasta luego. Hasta mañana. Hasta jueves. Hasta la victoria. Hasta la vista. Hasta something, right? Quoi?